All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are completely unlocking the examiner's playbook for Cambridge AS and A-level accounting, syllabus 9706. And specifically, we are zeroing in on the exact topic that consistently, year after year, separates the good students from the truly elite. I'm talking about the advantages and disadvantages of different business entities. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You're thinking, oh, I know this, it's just memorizing pros and cons. But actually, scratch that. It is absolutely not just about memorizing facts. If you want those top marks, it is entirely about seeing the exam through the eyes of the person marking it. We are going to go standard by standard, common trap by common trap, to see exactly how to secure maximum marks and shift your thinking into high gear. So let's dive right in.
Okay, there is a absolutely fascinating quote from the principal examiner reports that always stands out to me. It reads, "The difference between a B and an A star in accounting often comes down to how well you understand advantages and disadvantages of different business entities." Now, let's just pause and explore why that is for a second. Every single year, thousands of students who are perfectly capable of balancing a massive, highly complex statement of financial position, completely stumble when they are asked to evaluate whether a sole trader should convert to a private limited company. They look at that high tariff 9 to 15 mark question and they just panic. They resort to throwing down basic, disjointed bullet points, and as a result, they lose those crucial, heavy-hitting evaluation marks. It is literally heartbreaking to see as an examiner because the knowledge is there, but the strategy is missing. Today, we are deeply diagnosing those exact examiner reports, and we are completely rewiring that approach. Here is our roadmap for today's session. We'll start with the examiner's lens, move into the deconstruction debate, break down the method mark strategy, try a pause and practice exercise, and finish up with a strategy recap. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the examiner's lens. We really need to talk about decoding command words. Imagine you flip the page of your exam paper and you are staring down a massive 15-mark question. It's asking you to evaluate the extent to which forming a partnership is the most appropriate entity for a rapidly expanding retail business. Your heart rate spikes, right? Well, the key to not panicking is looking at the footholds the examiner has deliberately placed right there in the prompt for you. It all comes down to the command words. Let's really look at this comparison. Analyze versus evaluate, and explain versus to what extent. Listen to me carefully here. These are not synonyms. If a question asks you to analyze the disadvantages of a business entity, you absolutely need to show causal relationships. You have to explain, for instance, how the separation of ownership and control directly leads to agency problems. It's cause and effect. But, and this is a huge but, if you just list pros and cons for an evaluate question, you will actually completely miss the mark according to the syllabus constraints. Evaluate demands a judgment. You have to weigh the alternatives, look at the big picture, and deliver a heavily justified recommendation based on the highly specific scenario you were given. Now, looking at the examiner reports across the board, a very consistent, frustrating trend jumps out. Candidates are constantly confusing key terminology. Consider this a major examiner alert. We have to be obsessively specific. When you are talking about a private limited company, explicitly mentioning the phrases separate legal entity and limited liability right up front in your answer is totally essential. Defining these exact terms before you even try using them in extended responses is a non-negotiable foundational step. You can't skip it. Furthermore, the examiners note that candidates who reference cross-topic connections, like for example directly linking a partnership's structural setup to how the capital and current accounts are technically maintained on the books, those candidates achieve significantly higher marks. Why? Because it proves to the examiner a deep, holistic understanding of the theoretical architecture of accounting, not just that you memorize some vocabulary flashcards. Moving on to Section 2, the deconstruction debate. It's all about balancing your assessment objectives. There is always a massive struggle between two different approaches when tackling these high-tariff questions. Let me illustrate this by talking about two archetypal scholars I work with. We'll call them Alex and Sam. Now, Alex is highly technical. He loves formulas, he knows every fact, and he pushes for a purely factual textbook approach to every essay. Sam, on the other hand, is a creative thinker. She is brilliant at big picture arguments and pushes for a broad, conceptual perspective, but she struggles with structural precision. When they sit down in a study suite to debate an essay layout, they constantly clash. Alex wants to just list the liability rules, while Sam wants to write a philosophical essay on business risk. The reality? To unlock the top-tier marking bands, you need to satisfy three distinct cognitive domains mapped by the Cambridge syllabus: AO1 for knowledge and understanding, AO2 for analysis, and AO3 for evaluation. We literally need all three working in harmony.
Leaning entirely on Alex's factual recall will hit a hard ceiling in the middle marking bands. You just won't get an A star. But leaning only on Sam's broad arguments without Alex's technical backing means you lose those vital, easy foundational marks. You have to merge them. Notice how this matrix breaks it down to finally unlock those top-tier bands. Let's look at how Alex and Sam would self-correct using this framework. A purely descriptive statement from Alex might be, a sole trader has unlimited liability. Okay, that is pure AO1. It's perfectly true, but it's incredibly basic. It won't get you far. Now we add the causal impact, explaining that personal assets, like the owner's private house, are directly at risk if the business goes bankrupt. Boom, that brings an AO2 analysis. But to reach that holy grail evaluative column, the AO3, Sam steps in to synthesize the thought. While unlimited liability is a significant risk for this specific, localized retail business requiring very low initial capital, the ease of setup completely outweighs the heavy administrative burden of forming a limited company. Do you see the difference? That is pure AO3. It's justified, it's contextualized, and it's a fully evaluative argument that perfectly blends technical facts with a broader judgment. Let's transition into Section 3, the method mark strategy. This is where we create an unbreakable procedural framework. Now, before we look at the specific framework to solve the hardest part of these questions, I want to pause real quick. Shifting your grade from a B to an A star absolutely requires a consistent, weekly, strategic approach to your studies. So if you are serious about crushing your Cambridge exams, make sure you subscribe to Ace the Exams IGCSE O and A levels at the handle at acetheexam_IGCSE right now. Seriously, hit that subscribe button and definitely enable all notifications by ringing that bell. We drop weekly Cambridge breakthrough strategies just like this one, and you do not want to miss out on the exam hacks that could literally define your final grade. Okay, let's get back to getting you unstuck. When Alex and Sam were drafting their model response earlier, they hit a massive roadblock regarding timing and how to actually link their paragraphs together. They got completely stuck. To get them unstuck, I showed them the top 3 examiner warnings, which give us a crystal clear map of what to avoid. Warning number 1, answers are too vague. This means using lazy words like good or bad instead of professional accounting terms like cost-effective or capital-intensive. Warning number 2, forgetting format and presentation. Examiners get really frustrated when candidates forget proper headings or fail to use clear annotations when comparing entities. Don't make it hard for them to give you points. And warning number 3, which is probably the most critical of all, answers are not specific to the context given. If you write a beautiful generic essay on the benefits of partnerships, but you completely ignore that the prompt specifically mentioned a rapidly expanding retail business, your evaluation loses its meaning entirely and your marks will absolutely plummet. To ensure you never hit that roadblock, we deploy what I call the method mark strategy. This is a strict procedural framework where marks are essentially awarded for the analytical process itself. Let's walk through it. Step 1, deconstruct the question. Find those command words. Step 2, extract relevant data from the stimulus. Step 3, select your analytical framework. Ask yourself, are we comparing control, capital, or liability here? Step 4, execute with clear notation. Step 5, verify your results against the prompt's unique constraints. And finally, Step 6, present with correct terminology. I made Alex and Sam rewrite their flawed section out loud using this exact checklist, and let me tell you, it was like magic. It transformed a vague, fragmented answer into a precise, flawless, full-mark response that tied theoretical concepts like separate legal entity directly to the real-world risk profile of the business in the prompt. It's a total game changer. Welcome to Section 4, the Pause and Practice Workshop. It's time for some active application. I want to do an immersive workshop with you right now. I'm going to put a 60-second visual countdown timer in your head. Ready? Imagine a complex scenario describing a partnership of 3 individuals. They're desperately looking to raise $50,000 for a major expansion, but they're absolutely terrified of losing managerial control to outside shareholders. Go. The core tension you should be identifying right away is capital versus control. How do different business entities solve or worsen this specific tension? A purely analytical approach simply sees that converting to a public limited company raises the massive capital but destroys their control. But an evaluative approach, that looks at the specific $50,000 amount, the deep emotional need for control, and logically concludes that forming a private limited company or simply taking out a long-term bank loan within their current partnership structure is the optimal evidence-based conclusion. Time's up. Did you spot the tension? To properly structure that brilliant conclusion you just came up with, comparative connectives are absolutely key. I'm talking about using words like whereas, in contrast, conversely, or similarly. It is all about systematically identifying the similarities and the differences. For example, you could write, both partnerships and private limited companies allow for shared decision-making among founders. However, In contrast to a partnership, the private limited company offers limited liability, which is absolutely crucial for their risky expansion phase. Do you hear how professional that sounds? Supporting each comparison with that kind of evidence builds the structural architecture of a top-tier A-star answer. Let's try another quick visual exercise. Spot the flaw. I want you to identify the critical errors in this deeply flawed descriptive student answer. The business should become a limited company because it is safer. They can sell shares to get more money for the shop. Partnerships are bad because you can lose your house. Oh boy. Based on the examiner warnings we just discussed, the errors here are glaringly obvious. First, it is incredibly vague. We need to use terms like limited liability and equity capital, not childish phrases like safer or more money. Second, the format is poor. It's just a rambling block of text. And third, there is a total and complete lack of context regarding the specific type of shop, the local market, or their exact growth objectives. Now notice the massive cognitive escalation here as we dissect the traps set by examiners. We are moving from that descriptive, vague answer we just mocked to a fully evaluative one with a highly justified recommendation. Listen to this. To accommodate the rapid retail expansion required in the prompt, converting to a private limited company is highly recommended. Unlike a partnership, the incorporation creates a separate legal entity protecting personal assets. Furthermore, they can issue shares to family and friends, securing necessary equity finance without surrendering control to the general public. Wow. That right there, that is exactly what an evaluative, context-driven A-star response looks like. It hits AO1, AO2, and AO3 perfectly.
And finally, Section 5, Strategy Recap. Let's lock in our final takeaways.
To synthesize this entire masterclass, here are the 3 core, memorable pillars designed to guarantee you consistent exam success. First, the 3-step question scan. Never, ever start writing immediately. Scan for the command word, the entity type, and the business context first. Second, the paragraph balance formula. Every single paragraph you write needs AO1 knowledge, AO2 analysis, and AO3 evaluation. Remember, fact, impact, judgment. And third, the last 5 minutes review checklist. Use those vital final minutes of the exam to ensure you've made explicit use of comparative connectives, clearly defined your core terms, and provided a definitive, justified answer to the to what extent part of the prompt.
So, I leave you with a final, provocative challenge. How will you apply this exact method mark strategy and evaluative framework to your very next past paper question? When you sit down to practice tomorrow, will you fall back into the trap of listing advantages descriptively, or will you actively step up, apply the examiner's lens, and craft a deeply analytical, highly structured evaluation? The difference between those 2 approaches is exactly what we've unpacked today, and it is the key to mastering the Cambridge exams.
Remember, crushing Cambridge exams doesn't happen by accident. It requires consistent, high-level strategy. If you found this explainer valuable, you absolutely need to hit that subscribe button for Ace the Exam's IGCSE O and A levels at @theexam_IGCE. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our future exam hacks. And before you go, leave a comment down below with your exact target grade. Put it out there. Thanks for joining me today. Keep practicing those evaluations, and I'll see you in the next strategy session.